Hi everyone, good to see some familiar faces. Well, not actually see you, all I can see is my face, which is kind of disconcerting, but seeing the highs coming in from the chat. I might just give it a wee bit longer for those that are rushing, but don't want to be holding you guys up too much. All right, so I think we've got enough now to kick this thing off. So welcome to the very first in this series of webinars about updates to LT. So just to introduce myself, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Farley, one of the customer success managers for LT, and I'm looking after the Australia and New Zealand region, being helped behind the scenes by one of our education product managers, Sam Payton, and also Mark Sharma, who's one of the designers on the development team and one of the main people responsible for why LT looks so nice. So they'll be helping out with chat and QA if need be. And just to clarify the purpose or the aim of this webinar, it's, as the name implies, about recent updates to LT and also what's coming up as well. So I know that in some of the registration questions, people were asking kind of what LT is. So I might just quickly address those people who maybe are a bit unfamiliar with what LT is, and where you can go to learn a bit more about LT, because don't want to be delving too much into that side of things, as this is mainly to do with what's recently come out in LT. So if I jump over into our website, where most of the information is available for you to source what LT actually is, and where you can go to find more information. And there's some already recorded webinars that were done during, for when New Zealand was in lockdown with COVID, and these are available to watch at any time. And yeah, that gives you a good insight into what LT is. There's also the LT support site, which has a lot of useful beginner guides, as well as videos, any resources you might need to download, such as resources to provide students when you're inviting them. Also, if you are wanting to know if there's maybe some issues with LT at any time, you can subscribe to the service status. And topic of this webinar is the releases. So all release notes for the previous month can be found in this area as well. And this is going to be the main topic of this talk. But also, if you are wanting to provide any feedback or have any more in-depth questions, you can reach out to the other CSMs in addition to myself, and their details can be found here. There's also the LT community that you can join, so you can be chatting with other LT users. And if you want some more in-depth training, you can find details here as well. All right, so just a bit of housekeeping before we get into the meat of the webinar. So if you haven't joined Zoom webinars, which is probably very unlikely given everything moving online lately, there's the chat function available, which I mentioned at the start, and that's kind of more for, if you want to say hi's, byes, thank yous and whatnot, but also if you want to be maybe reaching out to Sam or Mark if you have technical issues and you don't want to be bothering the other attendees. There's also the Q&A feature that is available, and so that's if you want to be asking me a direct question or maybe posing a question to others, and maybe I could ask on your behalf. So those are the two main features that you can use. And this is being recorded as well. So if you want to come back later and watch it again, we'll be making it available on our website. All right. So there's no frantic chat messages coming in, so I'll carry on with the first parts of this, which is about the latest releases and content. Having come from the content team before being customer success manager, I've got a bit of a bias, so that's what I want to talk about first. And the first one is the Understand Your Physiology Collection, which has been out now for a couple of months, having come out in late July. But something that is really quite an impressive feat of development, in large part due to Tony McKnight, one of the founders of ADI, who kind of burrowed himself away and was just churning out a lot of content. And now it's finally available for you to use in LT. And some impressive stats on this collection. So it's got over 160 lessons in it, pretty sure over 2,000 images and close to 4,000 questions. So a really, really useful resource, whether you want to use it as is, or maybe you want to be taking some of the content from that collection and merging it with your own content that you're developing in LT. And as always, more details can be found on our website, as you can see here. So if you want to be looking at the collection yourself, if you do have access to LT, you can go into the content library and you'll see the option down the bottom for Understand Your Physiology, and so you can import that and preview it. And if you're wanting to get edit and publishing access, you can be talking to your sales rep about that as well. So yeah, that's first thing to mention for the collections. And the next one, which I'm equally excited about, is the biology courses that are now available. So these recently been released, and they are, have come from a partnership with Vernier, another company based in North America, also involved with content and hardware and science realm. And yeah, this is really quite cool because it's not only new content that's coming in, but it's also utilizing the Go Direct sensors that Vernier provides. So yeah, can really expand use of LT in your labs, being able to teach into biology or biochemistry. In terms of the content itself, again, you can access it under biology in the content library, and you can be importing either the entire collection or the individual modules. And similar to Understand Your Physiology, you can be previewing it, and then if you need edits or publishing permission access, you can reach out to your sales rep for that. And just checking my notes to make sure I haven't missed anything else off. So if you're intrigued as to kind of what standards the biology collection was developed against, it was the American Association for the Advancement of Science. It's a lovely acronym, imagine, from that one. And also, like many of the lessons that our content team have developed, it's aligned with the Bloom's taxonomy. Well, I guess technically everything's aligned with Bloom's taxonomy, but that was taken into consideration when developing the lessons. Okay, and speaking of Vernier as well, there's also a chemistry collection in the works as well. So if you or your colleagues teach chemistry and wanting to use that for an LT, definitely keep an ear out for developments of that. That's progressing well, I've heard. So that's probably what I'll talk about at the next webinar. All right. And the last piece on content releases. So there's always ongoing releases for existing collections, whether that's bug fixes or slight tweaks, and particularly of late, tweaks to help you teach distance with the lessons. So there's also community content as well. So community translated content, I should say. So that's in addition to the content that you can see in various languages, such as German, Spanish, French. And so if you really want to maybe scare your students, if you're teaching English as a native language students, you could maybe throw a couple of curveballs and see if they understand any French or German. All right, so that's very quick insight into what's come out in terms of content for LT. I'll just check if there's any questions or anything in the chat, but I'm not seeing anything, so might just give you a few seconds. If you do have any questions about any of the content that's recently been released or going to be released, I'm more than happy to answer them now, or you can put it in the chat, in the QA feature anytime during the webinar, and I can address it later. Or if you're too nervous to be asking in front of others, you can always reach out to me after the webinar and I can answer your questions. So a quiet bunch, but maybe I'll progress on to more the hardware releases that have come out. And so that is mainly to do with the LT sensors. So really quite excited about these. Been a long time in the works, but it's going to be pretty awesome when they're released in the next couple of months. And so if you're not familiar with LT sensors, haven't seen any of the marketing material that's been released, LT sensors, as you can probably tell by these two images, are USB sensors, and they only work with LT. But it's really awesome in that you can just simply plug the USB straight into a computer, and if you've got LT, then you can be just recording whatever the sensor is designed to record. So as you can see again on our website, the details of what those sensors are able to record. So at the moment, I think there's about 8 or 9 of these sensors, and you can see exactly what ones they're going to be able to record, or what measurements they're going to be able to record. And this provides a lot of cool opportunities, particularly with the uncertainty of teaching labs at the moment, that with social distancing, you might need to be utilizing non-lab space, and LT sensors should be able to help out with this, or even going so far as to allow students maybe to have the sensors at home, so you can really do distance learning with labs. So that's in addition to using the example data that we provide. You could potentially actually have students using LT sensors at home and recording their own data, or maybe their friends and families or whoever's with them at home, which really opens up some cool avenues to explore. And something that I'll delve into in regards to both Vernier biology and also the LT sensors is changes that the development team have done to the data panels in LT. So if you're in a lesson and you've got a data panel displayed, just double click into it, and you may already have noticed that there's changes to the data sampling settings down below. So if you select settings, you'll see there's this quite more extensive modal pops up, and that shows you if there's been any preset settings files applied. So in this case, the blood pressure and cardio microphone setting has been applied, and you can get an idea of what each channel is displaying. And for some of them, you can actually click on more info, and it'll take you out to our websites, which will have a lot of useful information. So that's really quite a cool new feature that's come out recently to support LT sensors when they're released, and also to help with the Vernier biology and chemistry collections, because you see we can switch to looking at Vernier hardware, so those GoDirect sensors. And as always, if you need to upload your own customized settings file, you can select this option down here and choose that settings file which you've created using LabChart. If you're unfamiliar with creating settings files in LabChart, just refer back to one of the previous webinars. And so that was on example data in LT. So that was one I hosted. I'm pretty sure it was nominated for an Emmy as well for webinars. So if you want to delve more into settings files and example data in LT, I'd recommend maybe going back and watching that webinar, or asking questions in this webinar or afterwards. All right, so seeing a bit of activity going on in Q&A, so I'll just check that before moving on. All right, so questions about costings for USB sensors. Given that there's so many different people attending this from different regions, I can't answer that off the top of my head, but have your details, Ricky, so I can, someone can be in touch with you around the costings of the USB sensors. And then another question around USB sensors, can they work concurrently with PowerLab inputs in a lesson? That's a good question, Neil. I would assume not, but I will have to follow up with that, or maybe someone else from ADI who's behind the scenes can be answering that for you. So I would assume not, but I would probably want to double check that. Oh, and the other question's already been answered, so cool. All right, so no more questions about LT sensors, it seems, and nothing in the chat of note. So, yeah, and Donna, you're always so literal. Yeah, I know the Emmys were cancelled, I know, but I had my own version of Emmys for webinars that I presented, and of course I won them all, being the host. All right, so next, changes to LT itself. Just pointing out again that if you ever want to know exactly what has come out recently, you can go on to the LT support site, and under the releases tab, you'll see the previous months. Now that we're in October, the September one should be coming up any day now. But it won't be going through each of these bullet points with you, but we'll highlight the key ones or key themes that have happened in the last couple of months. So as always, there's the bug fixes and performance improvements, which are particularly useful now given how many people have started using LT in the this year. So I want to make sure that it's not lagging for you. But there's also a lot of changes going on that you might not have noticed around accessibility of LT. So if I jump into LT, and what very difficult to notice, but I'm actually pressing tab and different elements are available in both the admin interface, but also in the lesson itself. So this allows you to tab between different parts of LT, which is obviously very useful if someone has vision impairments, or maybe you're broke your arm or something along those lines. And there's also been changes to alternative text to help screen readers better read the content in LT. So that's an ongoing initiative for the development teams to make sure that LT is as accessible as we can make it. So that's really cool to see. And something for those of you with larger accounts that's pretty cool is there's been some updates to the availability settings. And so normally if you don't have any sections, you won't see the section options, but if I was to quickly add a section on fly, and then now come into availability, you can see that now that there's sections, you can still choose to set section availability individually, but if you have, I know some people do have close to 30 sections for very large courses, there's this option to set all sections, which will hopefully save you a bit of time not having to manually go through each of the sections and setting them, particularly if most of them are for the exact same day and time or a large number. So hopefully that speeds process up of making content available to the students. Okay, so one that probably most of you are waiting for is around analytics in LT. And just kind of give some context to this. So while there are currently analytics in LT, these have always been a prototype feature, and these will be removed. These being the prototype feature will be removed later on this year or early next year maybe, and replaced with some much more capable analytics. And for the first milestone of the release of the analytics, it's mainly going to be covering what was initially available with the prototype analytics and kind of more around student progress at a higher level analytics rather than burrowing down into number of clicks per question and those details. But what's really cool is the work that the development team has done has laid the foundation for those more in-depth analytics to be added on. So that's where a lot of the work has gone into for the development analytics. But I'll show you some screenshots of what you can expect when the first milestone of analytics is released. But Ricky, I saw your question. I'll answer that after address analytics. All right, so what you'll notice when you come in as a admin to LT, once the first milestone is released, is that the dashboard has changed, and instead there's now the analytics button at the top, as well as just a quick insight into how many students have actually accepted the invite to that course. When you select the analytics button, you'll be taken into this environment here, which is still in the admin interface, but it's just really an expanded view of what has currently been in place with the dashboard that you may have seen in LT already. And so you can see a couple of things straight off the bat, that there's the option to view the lessons overall, or tab into looking at specific students. If you have sections, there'll be this option that will appear that will allow you to break down the lessons by sections of students. And you can get a quick idea in terms of number of lessons or modules. And then you can see for modules and lessons, useful information such as when the lesson's been made available from, when its due date is, and just like what you currently have with the dashboard in LT, you can see an overview of students' progress. And I'm pretty sure there'll be hover over functions, but as these are just screenshots, can't see that. And if you were to burrow into an individual lesson, so in this case, cardiac cycle, if there are published revisions to that lesson, there's options to toggle between the different revisions. Again, there's option for sections, and then you get this overview of student progress, and also how the questions have been attempted, and if there is any grading, what the average grade is. And then you can burrow right down into looking at questions and students for that particular lesson. And there's work going on for the particular questions to be able to see a bit of a distribution in terms of grades, and also what option for MCQs at least were chosen. So that's shown here. And for those BDI'd MCQ writers, yes, this is not a normal MCQ. This is more based around students' perceived confidence before starting lesson. And if you were to look at student progress, then what you can do for an individual student is look at all the lessons that they have access to, and you can see their progress and also their start date as well, and any grades associated with that. So that's a bit of an insight into the upcoming analytics, which I'm pretty excited about. And there's a lot more cool features in the backlog that the team will hopefully be able to work on at some stage when priority permits. But it's really, really cool seeing these analytics starting to come in fruition. I know they've been a heavily requested feature, so it's awesome to be able to get this out to you. All right. So I'm just checking what's on the chat. No questions about analytics, which, to be honest, pretty surprised. I thought there'd be a flurry of them, and nothing in the chat. So maybe I'll answer your question, Ricky, about how do sections differ from modules. And I'll just pop back into LT to show you this. So sections are referring to sections of students. So another term you can maybe use is groups of students. And that is just how you can divide your student cohort into specific groups. And then depending on the section, you can make particular content available only to that section. Modules differ from sections in that modules are groups of lessons. So if you wanted to be grouping these 4 lessons together under one umbrella of blood pressure, you use the module. So probably the easiest way is a section is a group of student accounts, and a lesson is a group of lessons. A module is a group of lessons, sorry. So hopefully that answered the question. Sweet. And Donna, with your question, glad you're excited about analytics updates. So are we. Are these analytics able to be exported into a report for individual courses and students? Great question. As far as I'm aware, for the first milestone, the export option isn't going to be available, but I'm pretty sure in subsequent milestones it will be. So that's really good to know that, that's something that you're, I assume, expecting or maybe hoping for analytics. So yeah, not likely for this first milestone, but subsequent milestones. Just back to sections. So classes equal sections. If you have multiple classes within a course, then you could use sections to differentiate between those classes. And yes, you could make lessons available to different classes at different times. Yes, so happy to maybe touch base with you after the webinar, Ricky, to delve into this, make sure that everything's crystal clear for you. All right. So no other questions coming in. Might move on then, but feel free to add any questions to the Q&A as they might pop up. So other cool things coming up that I want to let you know about is the Brain Trust that's happening in the first week of November. And like most conferences around the world, it's shifting online because unfortunately we can't do face-to-face. But that's actually got a silver lining in that means that we're going to run our first global Brain Trust, which will be virtual, but it means that we can have attendees from around the world. So the time zones that might luck out a bit or might have to have a few cups of coffees in the evening would be UK, Europe, Africa, those regions, likely to be early morning time for you guys. But for Australia, New Zealand, North America, and likely South America, the times should work. And the structure of Brain Trust this year is that because there's such a limited time where we can have as many people as possible, we're actually spreading the event over 4 days rather than one day and trying to cram it all there. And so it'll be the structure of having 2 hours where the first half hour will be a keynote followed by a half-hour presentation from someone at ADI, and then there'll be an hour dedicated to outer users presenting whatever they want, and those will be a bit more of a rapid fire presentation, so 10 minutes all up for questions as well as the presentation. It's designed more to get a quick insight into how others are using LT, which from experience I know a lot of people really like to see. And something that we're still trying to figure out the logistics for is to do kind of more of a informal session maybe after that webinar where people can be joining a Zoom meeting and interacting maybe in breakout rooms in Zoom, and getting more of that face-to-face and general discussion going. So keep an eye out for the email that will have more details and registration link. That will probably come out later this month. So pretty excited to be having finally a global event for Brain Trust. And if you have any questions around that, please let me know. Cool. And actually I might launch a poll now just while talking about Brain Trust. And just to get an idea of how many of you are actually interested in joining those sessions after the main presentation of Brain Trust, which will help us figure out the logistics. So I'm going to launch that poll now, and hopefully now you should see that poll and you can choose what answer you like. So that's good to know. So about 2/3 be interested, and a couple of maybes. So cool, thank you for that. It's good to know that we'll progress with that, and it's not just going to be a flop with me sitting in a Zoom meeting awkwardly. All right. So did have a couple of questions that people asked during the registration for this webinar, and I'll address those now unless there's any Q&A or chat. No, nothing yet. So the questions that were asked for the registration and of this webinar, some were a bit bit too broad to be addressing in this webinar. So hopefully someone from ADI has been in touch with you if you did ask those questions, to have a bit more of an in-depth session with you to ask them. But a couple of themes that came out were around grading and LMS integration as well. So yeah, I should point out that if you aren't familiar with LT grading, there has been a previous webinar that really delves into it, but I can give an oversight now, or overview now, of grading in LT. So maybe it's best to pop into this instance of LT and go to something created earlier for grading and analytics. And to get to the grading interface of LT, you go under student work, find the lesson of interest, and you'll see the grading option here. And there's actually been quite a bit of work done in grading environments in the last few months, and hopefully it's proved useful for those of you that use LT for grading. So when you enter the grading environment, you'll be presented with something like this, a large matrix that has all the students that did the lesson, and any questions that were able to be auto-graded, such as MCQs, drag and drop, etc., will be displayed in orange. Anything in blue will be something that has to be manually marked. Note that because this is a demonstration environment, a lot of the questions have already actually been marked, but when you come into a fresh environment, you'll see mostly these dots here indicating the question hasn't actually been marked yet. And when you want to actually mark the question, you can click on the question of note. You'll see what all the students' marks already are, and you can enter the mark in here. If you realize that maybe the maximum grade that you entered for that question was actually incorrect, it should have been 2, then you can update that on the fly. And you can provide any feedback as needed. You can see the model answer and if there are any grading instructions as well. Both of these having been put in when you authored the lesson. And then it's just a matter of either going through the questions or just working your way down the list. You can see the progress of grading as well for individual students as well as for the overall cohort. And if you're using sections, then you can filter down by that. There's also grading options such as if you want to not be biased and favor your favorite students, which I'm sure none of you do, but just in case, you can anonymize students. You can also hide the auto-graded if you're not interested in those. And there's the option to show questions that may haven't been assigned grades or not, or you can choose to hide those. And so in terms of grading and getting the marks into your LMS, there's a couple of ways you can do this. One is to just export the CSV file of that grade or those grades, and then you can pop those into your LMS. There's also LMS integration, and there's bidirectional syncing between the course that you integrate in LT with the relevant course in your LMS, and you can be pushing those grades from your LT course into your LMS. So those are 2 main ways at the moment to be getting grades from LT into your LMS. In terms of LMS integration, if you're not aware, we integrate with Blackboard, Moodle, and Canvas. There's some cool stuff happening behind the scenes, but it's still a bit up in the air, so I can't really say too much around that. But there's some promising potential around integration with LMSs. So hopefully in future webinars, I'll be able to explain more about what's happening there. And also, just to point out with LMS integrations that there isn't the capability yet of having essentially a iframe of LT in the actual LMS. So students are still needing to go into a separate tab and sign into LT. But there's also some cool work around making that process a bit easier as well. Cool. So anyway, seeing another question come in. Sorry, Mark, a bit late to answer this one for you. It's about brain trust. Yeah, so brain trust for Europe will be late in the night. Yes, that is correct, or early morning. But everything will be recorded. So yeah, you can watch the recordings maybe the next day at your leisure. And we're also maybe exploring having more relevant or appropriate time zone or meetings and time zones for UK Europe. So that's the social session I was mentioning before that the poll was about, because I appreciate that, yeah, it's probably nice to be talking with other educators and not doing so at 4 in the morning. Cool. Okay, so that's pretty much it for what I had to talk about, and not seeing any more questions or anything in the chat. I'll just reiterate again that if you ever need help with LT, you can access the support site from within LT, or go to ADInstruments.com/LT support, I think it is. You can send feedback at any time as well, whether that's you're experiencing a bug, or hopefully not, or maybe you just have some ideas that you want to pass on, either around the content or LT itself. And you can join the LT community, which we'll be utilizing quite a bit for the Brain Trust as well. And if you're wanting to watch this webinar again for some reason, you can do so hopefully in a couple of days once we get the recording and the notes up on our website. But other than that, I will end it here, and if you would be so kind as to fill out the survey that you'll probably be redirected to once the webinar finishes, that'll be really useful so we know how to tailor these webinars going forward. But other than that, I'll say goodbye, good evening, good morning, good night, whatever it is in your time zones, and cheers for watching. So take care.